Hey everyone, and welcome to the Babylon Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to taking a look at the inner workings, discussions, and shenanigans involved with making one of the world's most powerful, beautiful, and simple web rendering engines, Babylon.js. My name is Jason Carter, also known as Pirate JC in the Babylon world, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host David Katui, or Delta Kosh on the forum.
Hey.
And today we have a very special guest, Raanan Weber, also part of the Babylon team. We are pumped to have you, Raanan. And today's topic is going to be an interesting one. I think that we want this podcast to be real. We want it to be an inside look at some of the discussions that we have, even if those are challenging or modern or hard. And so one of those we're going to talk about today. And I want to hit the nail right on the head and jump out and say, let's talk about AI. Let's talk about how LLMs and
that's fancy topic, man. Like
it is a sensitive topic,
right?
But it's real. It's real. It's amongst us. It is obviously, if you're not talking about it, we could pretend it's not here, but it is now a part of how we develop as a Babylon development team. It's a part of what we do. So I think I'll start with this question, which is, let's just right out of the gate talk about how is the Babylon team, how are developers using AI to develop Babylon, and what does that mean? Is it faster? Is it slower? Is it helping us learn more? Are we adding new features? Let's talk about that. Raanan, you want to start?
Sure, I can talk about myself for a second.
Yes, please.
am always using VS Code, and I'm always using Copilot in VS Code. We thank you, GitHub, for providing us as an open source access to Copilot, and we had access to Copilot since the beginning. I think for a year or a little longer than a year, we have access to Copilot. And I can say that for me, for example, we just pushed the flow graph, right? And the flow graph there's a lot of nodes in the flow graph, and there's a lot of little classes that every node is a class that requires very specific implementation. And I think Copilot wrote half of this at least. So I document, I provide some prompt, and Copilot provides me with the at least the beginning of a functioning class, usually surprisingly with the right variables and with the right documentation, with the right structure as well. So it's actually helping a lot with providing us with faster way of delivering code, with testing code. All of the unit tests, most of the unit tests were written, the examples were written by Copilot, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And it's amazing to work with it as well.
So just real quick for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, when we say Copilot, you mentioned this, it's GitHub Copilot. It's accessible to everyone, and it is a tool that allows you to type in a prompt and it gives you code suggestions, right? It can help fill out.
Yeah. Or even when you code.
When you code.
IntelliSense,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
So
I had an example this morning. Yes. I had a switch case with like an enum, and I typed the first beginning of the enum, and automatically Copilot said, "Oh, you are talking about this enum," and then it generated all the rest of all the enums, so you don't have to go through this painful moment. Okay, I'm sure I have all my enums or not, right? And he was smart enough to understand the change between every line, because enum A, B, C, D, it was a different function to apply as a result. All was done. Like I was literally tap 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 tap. Done.
It's kind of scary sometimes, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it's like, but gosh, there is a ghost in the machine, right?
How is it for syntax for you guys, for the structure of how you like to organize your code? Does it learn from you?
Yeah.
Because every developer has slightly different ways of visually organizing their code. Is it force you into something that's not familiar, or does it learn from your pattern?
Usually it learns. So it's sometimes you need to adjust it. So in certain cases, you maybe need to force some form of a different structure if you want it to be different. But usually, again, for this very specific flow graph, it took all of the other blocks that were already written by people and has just copied the structure and made it exactly the same structure, which is exactly what I expected it to do.
It's incredible.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like there is a human, like peer developing with you. Like, it's scary.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like, and sometimes it does also crappy shit, right? Like, it happens as well, right? Like, sometimes it just hallucinates a function that does not exist. So we are still here as the code director, right? Like, you are just making sure that you stick on the line. And to your question, Jason, we recently did a quick poll around the team. Like 99% of Babylon team is using GitHub Copilot across the board.
And this is a tool that did not exist 2 years ago, two and a half years ago.
I don't know if I could go back to where it was.
So I guess the real question then here is, so this is a tool that takes some of the tedium away from coding, it sounds like. You don't have to fill out an in nauseam everything. You can start something and it'll finish it for you, which is incredible. It makes it feel more enjoyable to code. But what about efficiency? Does it make you more efficient? I mean, it sounds like you guys have already tapped on this, but like, are you able to accomplish more in a week because of these tools?
Oh yeah, like
for sure,
crazy. Yes.
It's kind of an amazing thing, right? It does beg a really interesting question, which is, what is your guys' personal take? Now, you can speak for yourselves, not on behalf of Babylon here. What is your personal take on the thought process of the emergence of AI coding tools? And again, basically 100% of the Babylon team is using AI tools. The emergence of these tools, the acceleration of efficiency in what you guys can do, and then the effect on the job market. What does that mean? Is our team smaller than it could be because of the fact that AI tools are now here? In 2 years, what is your personal take on this? I want to hit the hard questions.
You have two angles, right? You have the angle, or you do the same amount with less people.
Sure.
Or you do more with the same amount of people, right?
Yeah.
And that happens. It's not new, right? People are losing their memories, but I was an assembly developer when we moved from assembly to C. The number of assembly people to write a fucking line of code on the screen was crazy. And then C came, printf, C out, all of that. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. No, we're going to just do more, right? Like all the tools we have today, it's impossible to write them with assembly, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to elevate. I hope, let's be optimistic here. The amount of people working may not increase that much, right? But the thing that we can do will increase.
That's very, very well said. I'll add to that by saying, you have seen in the news cycles, everyone has mentions from some companies that we are not hiring more people,
yes,
or worse, we're reducing people because of AI tools. I think our example and our small little ecosystem of Babylon can say the team size has remained stable and steady. But the impact that this team has had, the amount of features we've been able to develop, the speed at which we've been able to develop, the development process has sped up and become more enjoyable. We are accomplishing far more because of these tools, but there is not in our context job loss as a result. What's interesting in our case, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, we are not in a position where we would have been able to grow the team significantly more, meaning there's another argument of this to say, do these AI tools stop you from hiring more people? In our case, no, we would not have grown this team. We simply now can accomplish more. And it's a really interesting.
And that's a capitalistic view, right? Like it's always like if you want to look at the dark side, we without AI, but without C, without C#, without JavaScript, without TypeScript, and everyone will just write assembly, I would need like 10,000 more developers, right?
Yeah.
So without a car and just having horses, yes, we're gonna need more people. The truth, the cold truth, and I'm sorry for that, right? Like if you're a developer today and you are not embracing AI, you are a COBOL developer for me. Like you will not stand the passage of time, unfortunately, because everyone will expect from you to deliver like other people who are using the tools, right? Like it's like I'm asking you to build a house, but you say, you know what? I'm not using any electrical tools, right? I'm gonna just do everything with my bare hands. Well, no, I won't work with you, right? Because I need my house in less than 50 years, right?
Yeah. And humanity can speed up and we can accomplish more because of tools.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the people who will be influenced by that the most are junior developers or people who are just joining the job market, coming out from university. And I don't know if universities have already adjusted their curriculum, the way they are learning, because they must, right? Eventually, they will have to integrate those tools during learning as well. But if they haven't, a junior that is coming to a company that expects them to use all of those tools, they will be lost. They will be at a loss and lost because first there will be a lot more expected from them without understanding that it is expected from them, right? And well, on the other hand, they will be able to deliver faster as well as junior developers as well. So I've seen there was the
simplified generation, right? Like when the school are not yet up to date with what the market expect. And so there is a gap here where people will be still trained on the old way. If they are not in the right mindset, they will skip the beat, right? That's just my fear. So with all the junior we are discussing with and everything, I try to hammer that down. Like, please focus on the new tools, right? Because the old one are old.
Yeah, learning algorithms is no longer. It's really no longer needed. Like, learn it; it's important. It's good for your mind and your brain and the way you are thinking. But eventually, implementing all of those sorting algorithms and stuff like that, the LLM will implement it much faster than you, much better than you, and much more efficient than any of us as well.
So this transitions very nicely into another interesting thing. I'm going to ask you both to be vulnerable. Have either one of you asked for GitHub Copilot to give you a piece of code, and you've just looked at it, quickly gone, sure, run, it works, and moved on?
Oh yeah, every day.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Now you're both at the top of your game. You might be able to look at it and check and go, nothing seems wrong there or whatever, but you've taken it and run. Okay. Now take a junior developer, take a person in a university, asking an LLM, can you show me how to do this? There's an interesting thing you mentioned, Raanan, which is the learning loop. And I'm curious your thoughts on this, because right now you can go into GitHub Copilot, any common LLM, Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, and they can give you some code. And someone can cut and paste that code and run it, and it probably will work. But it takes something to stop and look at that code and learn from that code.
Oh, you mean like learning from it? Yes, sure.
Do you think the average university student is going to do this, be driven to learn?
I'm afraid it's not going to be the case. I'm afraid those tools will make us a little
lazy.
A little lazy. Yeah, I wanted to say stupid, but lazy is a perfect word. Thank you very much. But we will jump into learning things that are much more difficult to learn. So just as David said, suddenly you can print on the screen. Yeah, suddenly all of those algorithms are here for you. You don't need to learn those things. It happened with higher level programming languages as well, right? JavaScript suddenly brings you all kinds of ways of dealing with APIs that you would never have thought that you needed. So you don't need to learn how those things work. You need to learn the next level of things. So it will make us lazy in regards of the things that we know and learn now, and will make us learn things that we probably still don't know what they are in the future. So, but people will continue. I hope people will continue learning. Please, people continue learning.
Again,
but it will
get back to my printf example. Who is capable to explain me how the printf function in C works? Right? You trust it, right? No one needs to understand that. I guess we are elevating the game, right? Okay, yes, for now, the LLM are still hallucinating. So, yeah, there is a need for a critical mind, of course. But in the future, it will improve. And then we're going to just trust it and build on top of that, right? I don't need to understand the chemical composition of my bricks. I just need to make sure that the bricks hold the house, right? Like, that's it.
Yeah, another take on this is there's an interesting thing around, hey, LLM, can I have a piece of code that does X? I do it and I run it and it works. Okay, cool. Can I have the next piece of code? I put it in, copy, paste, I run it. It doesn't work. I take it, I go back, hey, it's not working. It helps debug it and goes, here's the new code you need. I do that and it runs. The learning cycle for the human being in that is almost non-existent. It almost feels like there's a world where you're training people to effectively just go, let me facilitate between this other thing to make code. However, the human being may actually be interested. I think this is what you're saying. I'm not interested in learning code. I'm interested in making an application.
Yes.
And there's something powerful about that. Now, it does beg an interesting question of 5 years from now. What does it mean to be a software developer?
Sure. I don't think there will be software developers in 5 years. Maybe not 5 years, maybe in 10 years. But the job that I am doing right now, the official job description of what I'm doing right now, I doubt it will be as it is today. There are companies that it won't because the thing that we are now working with will replace us. But someone will need to continue doing other things.
Okay. So now think about somebody who is, because I don't think either of you are wired this way, but think about somebody who hears a statement like that and experiences existential dread. The thing that I've defined myself on, the thing that I've learned, the thing that I considered myself to be good at may be unnecessary for me to do. For that person, what advice do you have for them?
Sure. Push forward. There's always, I told my father exactly that. And he told me, yeah, but there will always be the people who needs to build the things that you're using, right? Like someone is still building. There is always be someone who's building. There will always be a person building. The systems will not be self-autonomous to build the new things as well. They are wonderful tools to make your work accelerate your work and to maybe even replace a lot of what we're doing right now. But there will still be people who need to manage and control them. And that's the thing you need to do. If you want to be successful in 10 years, you need to do it now. You need to jump on this AI bandwagon, understand how things work, and find your way in this crazy, amazing world.
David, do you want to add to that?
Well
said,
by the way, Ron. That's well said, right? I completely align with that.
I'll give you an example that's outside of the world of software development just for a second. That's kind of in this same vein. So I had the privilege of working at Disney for a while, and Disney experienced two pretty cataclysmic moments of technology disruption in their history. The first is when you go from pencil and paper, still two-dimensional drawings, but pencil and paper and flip books, to the computer. Still digital drawings and or scanning, but the computer becomes a place where all of the 2D images are imported and assembled, and you can, in that moment, you had some people, some talented animators who absolutely embraced, cool, I can use the computer as a tool to help me make better animations, right? To do my job faster, to do my job at a higher quality. I no longer have to obsess about flipping a book. I can, more carpal tunnel. And then there were some other artists who just the tactile feeling of pencil on paper, they refused to move on. Okay, so in that new world where there was two-dimensional animation in Disney's heyday, but it involved the computer, who is it that you think not just survived, but was successful, Raanan, to borrow your term? It was the people who embraced the computer. Okay, now...
Yes.
Yeah, so the people who would be the traditional pencil and paper animators, there's maybe 2 left in the world that are making a professional living. Now the second moment,
COBOL developers as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's the COBOL effect. Absolutely right.
And then, of course, the second moment in animation is where we go from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. So we still have the computer, but instead of a series of flat drawings in a flip book like state 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second, we now move to computer-generated animation where I'm not posing a hand from here to here to here to here. I'm doing this and shaping a key in between. It's a different skill set. And again, you had some people who made that transition and said, this computer this new technology, this new workflow is going to speed up and I can do things I couldn't do before. And those people became insanely successful, not just making great movies, financially successful. And then you had people who said, it misses something for me. I just need that 2-dimensional. And those people are, guess what? How many 2D animated movies are made today? Very, very few. It's the same analogy, just in a different industry. And the point I think I'm trying to make is I agree with both of you. The advice that I would give someone who is experiencing existential dread or maybe panic that you can't keep up with everything that's happening all around you. That's okay. I can't keep up with everything that's happening all around me. I live in this space every day. For you to cross your arms and be grumpy and sit in the corner, that means if you did that for 10 years, you will not be successful. You have to be willing to say, I need to try. I need to try this new tool. I need to see, could it help me? Could I do something more? I can't believe I'm about to praise these people, but go to YouTube and look up how many videos are people saying, use ChatGPT to make, 1,200 euros a week or whatever it is. I hate the fact that exists. And yet it represents an innovative spirit of moving forward. I'm going to try to use these tools to do something new. And my advice to anyone feeling worried about being displaced is, there's always going to be a market for human beings that are willing to solve problems, no matter what industry you're in. Yes. If you're willing to look at tools broadly and say, I want to learn a new tool to help me solve a new problem, you're going to be an invaluable resource for your entire career.
Yep.
Totally.
Now, we have
embrace the change, right?
Yeah, embrace the change. And there's many, many other more examples. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably thinking of 40 other ones as well. I know the photography was such an incredibly rare skill set at some point, and then digital cameras came about and democratized that. And there's a whole thing around, art as well. But the point being is really that, right? These are new tools. You could be a caveman and say, I don't want to use fire. Or you could be a caveman that says, I want to use fire. Which one is going to survive and succeed?
But I'm sure at that time there was podcast where Cro-Magnon people and Neanderthal people were like, oh my gosh, fire, it's a problem. It's gonna, because we struggle to adapt to change.
For sure. Yeah, they broadcast podcast instantly on the internet back then.
Yeah, of course.
Fire is going to be the death of our species.
Yeah, end of the civilization. We discovered fire.
It's so true. I love it. By the way, the sun came out here in Seattle.
Yeah, you're very bright, by the way.
Apparently. This is what heaven apparently looks like in my office. Yeah, it got pretty bright. I think it's an incredibly interesting thing. There's ethical concerns around AI as well. One that I think is kind of interesting is, do you think it's ethically okay for you guys to be employed as software developers and to have a tool that is writing code for you?
Sure.
It's a good question. So I can say that the company encourages it, actually.
Yeah. I'm not worried about I'm not worried you're touching on where the tool came from. That's a separate topic. But you guys using it. You guys using it. What are your thoughts?
I think the same thing as people who's not taking and using it. The company who will not use it will stay behind.
Yes.
Because all other companies will use it. Everyone will start using it. Don't think that everyone will think ethically. No, it's not good.
The cat is out of the box, right? Or the genie is out of the bottle, right? There is no way to put it back, right? That's done, right? We may have. Yeah, it's too late.
Yeah.
When C was out, it's a wave. You were either surfing the wave or being crushed by the wave. There is no alternative.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And again, back to what we said earlier, the development process for Babylon.js, we're about to release 8 here. We're 2 weeks away from releasing Babylon 8.
Yes.
I'm not going to give any hard data, but I will tell you that Babylon 8 has the most amount of new features for any release in Babylon's history by a pretty significant margin. I want to say I think we have 24 new features coming, and previously the highest was like 15. I don't know exactly, but
I think the number were, I think I checked yesterday, it's 24 versus 12 or something like that.
Okay, yeah. So doubling the amount of features.
Babylon 5 probably, right? That was the 12?
No, I guess the Babylon 7 was super high.
7?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
7 was high.
And what's funny is if you look at Babylon 6 to Babylon 7 to Babylon 8, when the emergence of and our adoption of AI tools, the number of features is going up. So there's a tangible example of the amount that we can do for the engine because we embrace these tools.
Yes.
Really tangible. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful.
Yes.
Any other thoughts?
As an artist,
yeah,
I would like to also say that I care a lot about the craft, and even in the artistic world. I mean, it's probably more pregnant in the artistic world, right? Like it's very, very complicated because AI were trained on uncopyrighted data, right? Like,
right.
So I draw a line, right? I draw a line where you are definitely stealing from an artist, right, without his permission, and having the LLM just running on your open source code, right? Because that's different for me, right? In one case, it's open source, it's allowed, you can do it, right? And I allow the LLM to look at all the Babylon.js code and help me with that, so it's okay. On the other side, using AI to generate an image, it has to be done with a correct data set, right? It exists, right? I know DALL-E, for instance, is trained on validated data. So yeah, I draw that line. That's what I wanted to say as well.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Our LLMs, I don't really want to get in too far into this because I think it's a rabbit hole, but our LLMs trained on code that they had permission to be trained on.
Yeah, because it's part of the GitHub. When you check on GitHub your code, right? Yes.
Got it.
The toss.
Yeah, interestingly, on the art subject for someone, that one's a little bit more relevant to me personally because I use AI-assisted editing tools to create artwork. So for me, I'm a big user of Adobe's Creative Cloud, and some of the image generation features they have in Photoshop now allow me to do image editing faster, considerably faster.
But they train their data on them. That was part of their cell, right? They trained their model on authorized data.
Yeah. Yes. Now, what would you say to somebody who cares about ethics but isn't familiar with, hey, Photoshop's okay, DALL-E's okay, but so and so's not okay? Is there resources where people can go and look? You just have to.
It's hard.
Ask an LLM; they'll tell you.
Yeah, ask.
Just ask. Yes. Ask.
No, but it's a complicated gray area, right? Like honestly, I'm working on eggshells every time, right? Because on one end, I don't want people to use my art to just reproduce it without even crediting me, and on the other hand, I am using Copilot every day for coding, right? So I leave both sides of this, and sometimes it's schizophrenic.
Yeah, you see both sides.
There were cases of LLMs who stole from other LLMs as well.
Yes.
So they generated their content based on conversation with the other LLMs, and that could be proven by different ways. So those cases exist, and they will always exist, right? The open source
nothing is
today.
all white or all black, right? Like I can generate energy with a fission nuclear system, and I can create a bomb, right? That's human, right? Or we can do the best and the worst.
There's a really high level question which I've struggled with a little bit, trying to understand. Babylon is an API for human beings. It was made because WebGL is way too hard to learn, and it can be easier. And so here it is. Here it's easier with class names you recognize and helper functions that make, turn 50 lines of code into one. Human beings is the target of that. So now if I'm a human being and I'm interested in creating a web experience that uses the GPU, previously I'm going to go to Babylon because I don't want to learn WebGL. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now people are going to go to an LLM and say, I want to do something.
Yes.
And so if Babylon existed as something for humans and humans are now going to LLMs, there's nothing that stops an LLM from going, cool, here's the WebGL code to do that. You don't need what does it mean for the human layer? So let's go back to Cobalt. Great, you're a Cobalt developer. Okay. And C comes along and makes it super, super easy to do things. Okay. But now an LLM can teach you about Cobalt. So why does C matter anymore?
Sure.
That's a good question.
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question, man. I have no answer. It's very good. You can go to an LLM and ask it to use WebGL. That's absolutely true. No problem with that.
Now, here's an interesting question. If I go to an LLM and I don't say, hey, teach me WebGL. I go to an LLM and I say, I want to make a web page that allows me to show a 3D model on my web page.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting one because it could go, great, here's some WebGL code. But
it will not go that way. It will not go that way. Because
what does it do?
Because he is trained on human code, right? Like, it's like the number of people who are reinventing the wheel, it's very low, right? Like limit 0 people, right? So he was trained on, you should use Babylon or 3JS, right? So he will probably, because 3JS has more users, he will probably generate 3JS stuff, right? Even the LLM is lazy somehow, right? Because he was trained on humans, right? So it's an inheritance stuff like, hey, that's my legacy. I am lazy, so I'm going to... And again, right, you don't want to have all the code to read the GLTF done manually. You don't have to... I mean, all of that, right? When we did C, we did that on top of assembly. But when we did C++ or C#, right, it was built on top of C or C++. Well, you don't just go back to the square root every time. You start on the previous layer each time. Else, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Well, and Raanan, I think you were saying this earlier as we were discussing this episode a bit, that the data set that these LLMs are trained on, there's just far more data for the human layer because that's what humans have been using for so long.
It's learning from the net. It's not learning from other machines, right? Maybe eventually they will be able to learn from some API, some standardized machine API. And
next episode is Skynet. We'll talk about that.
Yes. The next episode, we are not here anymore. They are just virtual avatars talking about, hey, remember when humans were driving that?
So let me...
In 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Let me ask you this question. 5 years from now, you're luckily able to be employed as a Babylon developer. What does your job look like?
Sure.
Wow.
Go ahead. Yeah.
That's. I think I will talk to the machine and not program anymore. So I think
you'll
job
design features.
My job would be to define things, to be more an architect. In that sense of an architect today, I give something and the human developers are doing it. So the human developers, I'm sorry for the term, but the code monkeys of the world will be replaced by machines, and you will just need to tell them what to do. So it will be more of a management type of job and less of a hands-on developer type of job. Sadly, I like developing, but this is where we're going, I think, at least.
But that will be developing in your mind?
Sorry?
That will be development in your mind. When you say I like development, you like writing code. You're saying
I like writing code, yes.
You're saying,
but I will not write code.
Right. But you will still develop software. You'll elevate your responsibility level. You'll delegate code to something else.
I wouldn't define it as a software developer anymore.
Yeah.
You move from an assembly routine to a printf function, right? That's exactly what's doing right now.
Yep. David, what's your job look like?
I don't know if it's 5 years, but at least if you asked 10 years, yes, I'm totally with Raanan. I don't know. The problem I'm facing right now with hallucination, right? Like I am trying to create... I'm going to give you a counter example. I need a bevel node for node geometry editor. Bevel to apply a nice curve on a sharp angle on geometries. Cannot do that with Claude. With none of them are capable of doing that because they are all trained on one difference. It's like they are all trained on quad data. Babylon.js or 3JS or we work on triangles, right? And applying a bevel on triangle, it's a freaking nightmare. And I had the same issue very recently. I created a node named substitution. No, my gosh. When you subdivide.
Subdivision.
I create a subdivide node. I tried to go with the LLM first. right? And after 2 hours of just crap, I gave up and I did it myself because the LLM were incapable of generating a subdivision with triangles, right? So in 10 years from now, all of that will be fixed, right? They will have, they will think, right? They will say, oh my gosh, no, what I'm generating. And they will probably be capable of executing what they are generating. That's the big difference between us and AI, right? I take the code, it does not work, I report back, right? And so when that will be smooth, yes, of course. And like Raanan, like a code director. Hey, okay, I need 3 blocks, I need to do that. This function is too slow, right? That's exactly what my boss could do, right? If I was a developer and he asked me, okay, David, today I need you to do A, B, and C, right? I'll become the boss.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. In the art world, I think a lot about there are artists and there are art directors. And I think a very similar analogy is you're going to have a lot of artists who are capable of elevating to become art directors, to define what they want by directing other tools to do it for them. Yeah.
So today for art is super complicated, even if the industry is going that way, because every try is random, right? Like you lose the context of the previous image. It's complicated to say, I like what you do, but move that tree a little bit higher, or right, the LLM, we just regenerate everything. But the day we can fix that, we are already at that level with code. I can just underline a specific piece of my code and say that does not work, and everything stays the same beside that function. So we are a little bit in advance on that front.
It's pretty crazy, pretty amazing.
Yeah. It messes up sometimes, but most of the time.
Yeah. That's why it's not perfect yet, right? So maybe 5 or 10 years, we need to.
I had some fights with them.
Yes.
I just had this interesting discussion the other day with a friend who is not in this world at all, understands that ChatGPT is a thing, but doesn't use it as a daily habit. And he asked me, he said, if you know that these things hallucinate. He didn't know the term at the time, but if you know these things hallucinate, why is it that you keep going back to them? And I said, because the amount of times that they provide something of value to me far outweighs the amount of times that they don't. And even if they provide something that is wrong, it likely is still useful for me to take it, save myself some time, and fix the one part that's wrong.
Exactly. But you know what? You know who is doing that as well, who is not perfect and hallucinate answers? Humans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, show me someone who is telling the truth 100% of the time, right? Like we are used to that. When I talk with anyone else.
Politicians. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go into that. Yes, Jason, that's good.
Well, don't start me on that. But and so. Yes, yes, they hallucinate, and that's why you still need to learn critical thinking. You still need to make sure that you understand what is going on, right? If it's a black box, you have a problem, and that's why you need to go to school. You need to learn everything. You need to know the fundamentals. You know what? I'm an artist. I started by learning the fundamentals of anatomy and everything, and now I'm just using Blender. So I have no problem with anatomy because I don't do the anatomy anymore. But I understand it enough. So when I see something wrong, I can fix it. Yeah. And that's the same with code, right? Like, yes, I can ask the LLM to generate me a bevel, but if the bevel is up, I need to understand why, right? Else, it's not useful, right? It's just a black box and I have zero value added.
Yep. Yeah. Well said, for sure. Well, thank you guys for diving into this topic. It's really interesting because obviously AI is disruptive in our world at a level that is, I think, really unprecedented. I don't think we've experienced this kind of
so fast. No, it's incredible.
Change so fast. Exactly. Yeah.
And among all the industries, right? When you look at C again versus assembly, it was disruptive for a very tiny portion of the society. I mean, no one heard about that wave. No one heard about it. AI, even my grandma heard about it, right? Like it's everyone understands that, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I really think you guys hit something that's important on the head, which is success. For anybody who wants to be successful, it's going to be not burying your head in the sand, but learning to embrace whatever new tools come. And I personally believe that in the next 5 years, we're going to see new tools that we haven't even thought of yet.
Mind blown, for sure.
For sure.
But keep your critical thinking, right?
Exactly.
That's the point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks everyone for joining us for this discussion. We'd love to hear your thoughts. No matter where you're listening to this, drop a comment in, give your thoughts about this. If you're using AI and how, and if it's helping you or hurting you, I would love to hear any about it. But thanks as always for tuning in to the Babylon podcast, to the Babylon Chronicles. David, thanks for joining. Raanan, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll see everyone later.
Bye everyone. Cheers.
Everyone.